Alright, so not only am I going to be talking about one of the greatest movies of all time, but this is by far my favorite movie of all time. And I'm so excited to finally be doing a review about it. I mean, because I was really getting to the edge of insanity watching all these crummy movies. So today, I'm finally going to talk to you about my favorite movie of all time, Back to the Future. And for special occasion, I even get my Biff Tannen shirt on. So, Back to the Future came out in 1985, directed by Robert Zemeckis, written by Robert Zemeckis, starring Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd. Michael J. Fox plays Marty McFly, who's a typical teenager, into rock music, has a girlfriend, but not doing so great in school. And we learn that he's friends with Christopher Lloyd's character, Dr. Emmett Brown, who's a middle-aged or even older scientist who always has failed inventions and experiments. Doc ends up, though, creating something that finally works, and it's a time machine, and he wants to show Marty. But before we get to that, we meet Marty's family, his mom and dad, his brother and sister, and his dad's co-worker, Biff Tannen. And we see that Biff is a straight-up bully. He was a bully to Marty's dad in high school, and he's a bully to him now when they work together. And his mom's an alcoholic, and it just seems the McFly McFamily, the McFly family is just in like a slump at the time. Marty goes to meet Doc at a parking lot where he's going to unveil his most recent invention, hopefully finally something that works. And it ends up being a time machine made out of a DeLorean. And the way that the time machine goes back in time, once it hits 88 miles per hour, the flux capacitor reacts with the time circuits and sends the car to whatever destination. And it needs 1.21 gigawatts of electricity, and that is created by a plutonium kick. And the way Doc got his hands on the plutonium, he told a bunch of Libyan nationalists that he was going to make them a bomb. But what he did was just give them a bomb casing full of used pinball machine parts, as it's said in the movie. And he takes the plutonium from the Libyans. What ends up happening is the Libyans find out about this and come to Hill Valley and confront Doc by using guns and a Volkswagen bus. So the Libyans end up actually shooting Doc, and they're gunning for Marty next. But Marty hops in the DeLorean, goes on a chase throughout the entire parking lot, and once he hits 88 miles per hour, he goes back in time to 1955. Doc had that most recently programmed in the time circuits because he was talking about historic days in history, or famous, days in history, and he put in 1955 because that was the year he invented time travel by creating the flux capacitor. It's a whole story. So Marty gets sent back in time to 1955, where he ends up meeting first his father in a cafe, a little side diner cafe thing, because he's just looking for a phone to use, but then he ends up having to buy something, and he runs into his father. Can you imagine meeting your dad 30 years ago? It's genius. But then we see Biff, and how Biff is still bullying George 30 years ago. Nothing's changed. And so once George leaves, Marty follows him home, but can't seem to find him. So he looks up in a tree and he sees that George is spying on Lorraine, who ends up being Marty's mom. And George falls out of the tree, but before getting hit by a car, Marty pushes him out of the way and gets hit by the car. And the car ends up being driven by Lorraine's dad. So technically, Marty got hit by his grandfather. Yeah. So he's brought inside and he's taken care of by his mom, who's only 17 years old at the time. And obviously gets the Florence Nightingale effect, as Doc says, and starts having some kind of crush on Marty. And Marty's like, no, I can't do this. I just gotta leave. So he leaves and finds Doc Brown's mansion in 1955. Doc Brown is really hesitant to even talk to this kid because he has no idea who Marty McFly is. He has no idea who any McFly is. But then he ends up saying, no, I know how you got that bump on your head. You fell off the toilet while you were hanging a clock, and you bumped your head on the sink, and you created the flux capacitor, which makes time travel possible. So Doc's like, what? You know how this happened? And Marty shows him a picture of the flux capacitor, and it's all there. And Doc is like, we got to get you home. Like right away, he's he's siding with Marty, and we got to get you back to 1985. But there's no way we can get plutonium nowadays. It just doesn't exist in great quantities yet, or any kind of quantity yet. So how are we going to generate 1.21 gigawatts of electricity? We're going to need to know when a bolt of lightning is going to strike. But there's no way to predict when or where it's going to happen. But because Marty has a flyer to save the clock tower that he received in 1985, he knows exactly when and where a bolt of lightning will strike. And it happens to be in 6 days from where he is right now in 1955. So he spends a week, but realizes that because he interrupted the relationship with his mother and father, he has to get them back together. Because he's realizing also that a picture that he has of his brother and sister and himself, his brother's starting to fade away because he's becoming non-existent. Because Marty's disrupting the relationship, and if his parents don't get together, the kids will never exist, and Marty will never exist. So he spends a majority of the movie trying to get George hooked up with Lorraine and get them to go to the dance, because that's the dance where they dance for the first time and kiss for the first time and fall in love. But Lorraine has the hots for Marty, and George is just really shy and awkward. And Biff is trying to get to go with Lorraine because Biff's just a bully who's pissing everyone off. So Marty steps in and, teaches George confidence and how to act with women. And they end up coming with a plan because Marty realizes that Lorraine wants to go with him to the dance. So the plan is that Marty's going to harass Lorraine. George is going to step in as the good guy, knock Marty out, and save the day. And they go through with this plan at the dance, but right before the dance, Marty goes to Doc and sees at the clock tower they're setting up this whole rig where right on the street on the side of the clock tower, Marty's going to start way back and hit 88 miles per hour, then a bolt of lightning is going to come down a wire and right at the precise time strike the DeLorean and send Marty back to 1985. But Marty writes this note to Doc saying, on the night I go back in time, or the night I come to 1955, you will be shot by Libyan terrorists. But Doc doesn't want... Jeez, I keep hitting the microphone, I'm sorry. Doc doesn't want anything to know... He doesn't want to know anything about the future because that could disrupt future events and cause a rip in the space-time continuum, as he says. So Marty goes to the dance with Lorraine, and she's acting really frisky and really provocative. And... just when he thinks that George is going to pull him out of the car and save Lorraine, it ends up being Biff. And Biff is drunk, and he starts, grabbing Lorraine and wants to do things with her, but Marty gets detained by Biff's cronies and is thrown in the back of the car of the band playing at the dance. So George goes to save the day, and thinking it's Marty, but it ends up being Biff. And he finally wants to stand up to Biff, and Biff gets him in an arm hold, and it's just chaos going on, because Marty's nowhere to be found. Doc is waiting on Marty to get back so he can send him back to 1985, but George finally gets that huge push of confidence and just slams Biff right in the mug. Boom! And ends up bringing Lorraine into the dance, and they start dancing together. Marty gets out of the trunk of the bandmate's car, and but it turns out to open the trunk, Marvin Berry sliced his hand. So the dance needs to go on, but they don't have a guitar player because Marvin sliced his hand, can't play guitar. But fortunate enough, because Marty's into music and plays guitar, he plays guitar with the band, Marvin Berry and the Starlighters. And they play Earth Angel, which is the song where George and Lorraine first kiss, but something's disrupted during the dance, and Marty feels like he's getting really pale, and things aren't going right. Like, why isn't everything getting back to normal? Because they're together, and he finally sees that George steps up again and kisses Lorraine, and that seals the deal. Marty's back to full power, I guess you would say, and everything ends up being a happy ending at the dance. Marty plays Johnny Be Good, totally shreds on guitar, has to get out of there, has one final chat with George and Lorraine about how their lives are going to end up together, and that if they ever have an 8-year-old who sets fire to a living room rug, go easy on him, okay? And so Marty's rushing back to the clock tower to finally go back to 1985, and it's the night of the storm, so stuff's just going crazy. There's lightning and wind, and it's chaos. So he gets in the car and thanks Doc for what he's helping him do, because he couldn't do it without him. He's the only one who could help him out. Marty goes to the starting point, but learns that something's wrong with the cable. The cable gets unattached because of a tree falling down after getting hit by lightning, and smacks the cable down. So Doc has to climb all the way to the top of the clock tower, grab the cable, plug it back in, but the part that he plugs back in tears apart another part of the cable on the ground. So Marty's already back at the starting line where he's got to start from to drive, and time is not slowing down for anyone. And just right at the time Marty starts going, Doc hooks the thing back up on top of the clock tower, slides all the way down, grabs the piece that was disconnected by the tree, and then hooks it back in just as lightning strikes the top of the clock tower, sending lightning right into the DeLorean, sending Marty back to 1985. And it's perfect. He sees that everything is okay. He looks around. 1985 looks great. It's just back to the version that he knows. But he sends himself back 10 minutes before he initially left, so he could try to save Doc from the Libyans. So he ends up running all the way, because the car's out of gas. He ends up running all the way to the parking lot of the mall where he initially went back in time, and he sees Doc get shot. And then he sees himself go back in time, and the Libyans crash into this photo booth type of thing. He goes to Doc to see if Doc's okay, and he sees that Doc is not breathing, but then it ends up Doc is fine. He's wearing a bulletproof vest because he knew, because of Marty's note, even though he said he wasn't going to open it. So then Marty goes back to his house. His house is completely different than what he remembers. His mom is fit. His dad is successful. His dad's a sci-fi writer. His brother and sister are successful. Everything's different. Biff is working for them as an auto detailer, and everything turns out being okay. Then he goes to see his girlfriend Jennifer, sees that he gets a truck that he wanted, and then Doc comes back saying, Marty, you got to come with me to the year 2015. It's about your kids. So that leaves it open for parts 2 and parts 3. But the first film itself is perfect. Perfect. It stands the test of time. If you look at some of the first shots when he's riding down the street on a skateboard, you see all the fast food places. The only thing that's different about then and now, or the logos are different, but everything's still the same. I mean, sure, there's some 80s references, but that's about it. I really like, why aren't films like this made anymore? Because the 70s, 80s, and 90s did so many things perfectly that can't be done again today, or else it'll just come off as cheesy and a copycat. But if you haven't seen Back to the Future yet, do yourself a favor, Netflix it, TiVo it next time it's on TV, and don't just stay at the first one. Watch the second and third one, because this probably is one of the best trilogies of all time, if not the best. People argue saying Lord of the Rings, Star Wars. No. Consistency-wise, I think Back to the Future is the best trilogy of all time. And the first one is the best film of all time. And it's just, sad to see what's happened with Michael J. Fox. I mean, he seems like such a good guy. And all of them seem like such nice people. I know Tom Wilson, who plays Biff, is one of the nicest guys. Stand-up comedian. He's great. Christopher Lloyd, what a great career. It's just the cast, and so much it seems like so much love and effort was put into this movie, and it shows because no matter how many times I've seen this movie, anytime it's on TV, I'll watch the entire thing. I guarantee at least 1/4 of my brain is dedicated to useless Back to the Future knowledge, but it's there. I feel like it needs to be there for a reason. I don't know why, but it is. And do yourself a favor, like I said, if you haven't seen it, rent it, buy it. The Blu-ray trilogy comes out in October. Just view this movie at any cost. Like I say at the end of all the Why It Sucks, do not waste your time on this. I'm telling you, this is not a waste of time. This is a great dedication of time to something that you'll enjoy for years to come. And it shames me that this is going to be one of the only positive movie reviews I do, because at least it's my favorite movie of all time. And so that's Back to the Future. I know I can't really do it justice just talking about it. You have to visualize it. So I don't want to waste any more of your time. Just go watch it. Thanks for watching this episode of Why It Rocks. Hopefully I can do more positive reviews in the future. But next time we're going to go back to a crappy movie. And I'm going to let you know why vampires suck.
Well, that's very nice. Thank you very much.